Give it up for Lily and Gunit again, please. I feel like the summit is really moving now. We're really progressing and rolling. I love that. You're getting Oscar-winning directors, you're getting comedy, you're getting knowledge. That's what today is all about, that whole power of moving things on in different directions. So thank you once again for that. And yeah, I'll try and avoid the leak as well, just to stay on this side. I don't want to rust, with my chair. Okay, next, please give a warm welcome to Raj, Kumar, and Mastercard Foundation's Reeta Roy. Raj! Come on, do it, man.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. How's it going so far? What do you think? I got to say, this has been inspirational watching a lot of these sessions from backstage, and we're going to continue with the inspiration this morning with this conversation with Reeta Roy. At Devex, we're always looking for the big story that no one has told, the underreported story. And there's actually two big stories that are closely related. You know one of them, but you don't know the other, I'm guessing. So in 2006, Mastercard went public as a company. And at the time, it was, a question. Would this company do well? Would it succeed? Nobody knew for sure. They did this one thing that was interesting. They put aside some of the shares in the company into a foundation. Well, you know one part of the story, which is over a decade or so since then, there was a guy named Ajay Banga who was CEO, and during his tenure, the value of those shares went up by 16x. And he was seen widely as a real turnaround expert, somebody who could make a company thrive and succeed. And then, surprisingly, last year, surprisingly to all of us, suddenly he was announced as the new president of the World Bank. So that part of the story you know. The part you might not know is at the time, they put aside those shares in that foundation. They were thought to be worth maybe $600 million. And that foundation, which has kept a low profile, maybe here, but a high profile in the work, has now grown to be the fourth or fifth largest in the world. It is a $40 billion endowment, and Reeta Roy leads this organization, and in some fascinating ways, and I just want to give you all a chance, and me too, to meet her and hear from her.
Thank you.
Reeta, you live in Rwanda.
I do. I've been living there for the last 3 years.
You guys were doing localization before it was cool. You decided in 2009 to focus on Africa, and you actually moved there as the chief executive officer of this foundation. Your team moved there. Your funding is there. Tell us a bit about what you're doing since 2009, what the Mastercard Foundation has really grown to be.
So first of all, thank you so much, Raj, and what a pleasure it is to be here. And I want to thank Shamina and the whole team. I really, really feel fabulous to be here and to be part of all these conversations. So, as you said, it's a little secret, and it seems like the foundation, has grown exponentially. We made the decision in 2009 to focus on sub-Saharan Africa, and specifically on young people. Now, our mandate is to do two things: to advance education and advance financial inclusion. But about 10 years into this work, we took stock and said, what have we learned and what have we missed? And if we could do one thing, what would we do? And the answer came fast, with a lot of consultation, but it came fast. And we needed to focus on young people and youth employment. And so we set out a bold new strategy called Young Africa Works, which put out a goal of 30 million young people in dignified and fulfilling work. But in order to undertake that work, we felt we couldn't do it from Toronto, so we're a Canadian foundation, that we needed to transform ourselves, and that's what we did. And so I would say my entire executive team is from Africa. Most of our staff are from Africa. 66% of our partners, the organizations that we fund, are African, and it's phenomenal.
You got to see, by the way, some of what it means to have a transformation in life as a young person yourself, right? You moved to this country when you were 16. Your mom mortgaged the house so you could come here on your own and essentially make your way in the world. And this is where you have landed. Now you're trying to do much the same for millions of young people in Africa. A lot of people in this town, when they talk about the youth bulge in Africa, they say it with a sense of fear, right? A sense of foreboding. How are we ever going to get out of this problem of so many people, so many young people being born in countries in Africa? How do you see it?
So on one level, it's absolutely true. By 2035, the continent will have the youngest and the largest workforce in the world, and that's the future. It's not a challenge, it's a massive opportunity. You just think about this, a massive talent pool for virtually every single industry, which is facing a labor shortage. But that takes an investment in education, in skills, in knowledge transfer, but it also means getting behind young people. Just like the examples you heard earlier today on the other panels, getting behind young women and their ideas. That's where the action is. And when we look at the programs that we're engaged in, part of, we're already seeing results. And actually, when you spoke about the beginning, about one of the challenges is it's really about mindset. And I think the biggest challenge facing the continent is that so many people, unfortunately, have an outdated picture of the African continent. And it's time to change that narrative.
And please applaud that. And that is one of the reasons why you're moving to Rwanda, your team being from the continent of Africa, changes immediately, because the dynamic in your executive group is not about, hey, what do we do for people over there? It's what do we do for the communities we live in and come from and know, which is so critical to a new way of thinking about philanthropy. You are a foundation, it's in your name, but you don't think of yourself as a traditional foundation. What's different about the way you actually operate?
Well, I'll say a few things. I'd like to think that we lead at the foundation by listening and by seeking first to understand. Walk into rooms, suspend judgment. We're not the smartest kid in the room. We've got a lot to learn. And the people who have the greatest amount to teach us, historically, have also been excluded from these conversations. These are the very people who live right with the problems, whether it is a shortage of X, Y, and Z, but they also have insights about what could work. And which is one of the major reasons why when we think about sustainability, we see the huge importance in backing, getting behind, partnering, accompanying African organizations who hold the trust in their communities. Just like this phenomenal activist you heard a moment ago who said that her people are stewarding 80% of our natural resources. And we need to trust them. They've been doing this work for centuries, long before we arrived on the scene.
Yesterday, we had a session with social innovators from around the world here in this very theater. And one of them, who's a very successful East African entrepreneur, said to me, one of the problems is I'm supposed to come up with a PowerPoint presentation and an elevator pitch. And he said, I was able to figure out how to do this. And so I got foundation funding in the US to start my organization, which is now massive in many countries in Africa. But so many other entrepreneurs are stuck because they don't know how to talk the language of the philanthropy world. They don't know how to interface. You seem to be doing something different in finding and unlocking the opportunities for people where they are. What lessons are there for kind of the broader philanthropy community that you've learned now in the last decade of doing this?
So the first thing I think is, one, listen. Second, go, see, create a network. And networks bring you into other networks. And those networks actually will change your mind, in fact, will blow your mind. And when you think about investing in young people, it is a profound thing. It's not just about putting in money based on that elevator pitch. It is about building trust. It is about really starting to understand how they see the world and their ideas. We have met so many young entrepreneurs, probably like this gentleman you spoke about, who have reinvented what it means to run a school. What is a school? How do you deliver education? What is a bank? How do you distribute capital in a more accessible, affordable, private way right to someone's phone? They are cracking all nuts, and it's time for us to get behind them.
I think this vision of Africa as an entrepreneurial continent, maybe the most entrepreneurial, is a different way of thinking of it than we normally hear. And even during these spring meetings, the World Bank is right down the road, finance ministers are meeting, and there is a sense that the world is spinning out of control a bit. that it's hard to get financing where it's needed, that the climate situation is worsening. How do you see where we are today as a foundation that is massive in some ways, but going up against challenges that are far, far bigger? How do you see where your entry point is to actually move the needle on these larger scale issues you care so much about?
You know, there's no question. We live in very probably dangerous times, and it's a time when there's a great amount of fragmentation and forces which pull us apart rather than bring us together. So when I think about what we're doing in Africa, I just look first at the young people, young women, and what they are already doing. They're not waiting for us. They're not waiting for some foundation or some charity to show up. Most of them have multiple income streams which they're working on because that's survival. But at its very core, it's ingenuity, it's innovation, it's thinking about how do I get ahead and how do I invest in myself. So that's number one. And when you tap into that type of energy, what comes back are ideas around climate, ideas around regenerative agriculture, which I was just in Nigeria, which we saw put in practice in the northern part of the country. There are ideas around how do we close gaps and make maternal child health safer. It's about asking, and it's about listening. If you put it out there, it's going to come right back.
So just in our final minute, you've been on this remarkable journey. You started as the CEO of the foundation just shortly after it was founded. You've seen this incredible rise in its assets and what it's able to do, and you've made this huge strategic shift, moving the entire foundation from Canada to Africa. What's next? What's next, and how can this community engage and support the work you're trying to do?
What's next is really what's now, and that is getting behind young people. And so I know there are many leaders here, many influential people here. Two things. One, if you're building a business, if you're working on the continent, perhaps you're working in another part of the world, just listen. And if you're not getting input from young people, go seek it, go solicit it right away. Second, if you're an organization which is like ours, a philanthropy, a foundation, which fundamentally, at its core, our business model is to work through others, other organizations. Wherever you might be, whether you're in Africa, whether you're in Asia, look first and think about who's in my population of organizations I'm working with, and are they from this country? Because they're the ones who have the greatest vested interests in positive outcomes.
Sometimes the underreported stories are the most important stories of all. Please join me in thanking Reeta Roy.
Thank you.